Happy Sunday, folks. We got another week down, so another update here. Some of what went on last week. I did some outreach, so I met with the Coos Curry Farm Bureau, learned some about what they're seeing, challenges they're seeing, economies of scale, took a bit of a tour of some ranch land, and learned more about where some of the changes in environmental and wetland regulations have impeded or reduced the amount of the agricultural industry in Coos County. Um, One of the challenges is always going to be around waterways, so wetlands play a factor, and then the state definitions, and then when inspectors come down and look at things, what season are they looking? Because if you come to the coast in the winter, everything looks like a wetland because it rains here. But when you've got the cattle out in certain fields in the summer, it's less so. So learning more about some of the things going on there, and one of the interesting things I found out about is that the Coos Curry Farm Bureau has a lot of younger folks right now. That's pretty rare in our area. A lot of associations, a lot of groups struggle to find younger folks. Um, I can just note I turned 40 this year and I'm still one of the younger people at a lot of tables. That shouldn't be happening. There should be people younger than me at these tables. So we have to encourage them where we can. It sounds like the folks with the Farm Bureau have achieved that. They've got younger folks in their meetings. Uh, had a meeting between Myrtle Point and the South Coast Development Council. I think I mentioned Powers has joined the SCDC. Myrtle Point, we took a tour, talked with the city manager, some of the city staff, the public works, about what they have going on out in Myrtle Point, how the SCDC can help getting properties broadcast out to a wider market, assist with the marketing so that their staff don't have to spend as much time on those things. And the South Coast Development Council is a broad regional resource. It also extends into Curry and all the way up to Florence, uh, helping encourage development, providing information, and working with investors that begin to look in our area. They are often a first point of contact who makes sure those folks have the information they need and coordinate with the municipalities where the development interest is taking place to make sure everyone's on the same page and coordinates together to encourage developers to do business here. Recently, I saw that couple day notice, and they were able to pull together a full room of state staff, multiple city managers. Obviously, I was there as well in this room, and other community partners for a larger developer that was looking at our area. And they said that the people coming to look at our area said that that was the best showing they've seen anywhere they went. It was comprehensive. They had everybody they needed at one table on short notice, and they were extremely impressed and interested in our area. So it's good to have Myrtle Point looking at it as well. They had objectives, just like Powers had things they were interested in. In Myrtle Point, there were talks around they could really use a brewery. They think it would do really well. There were some codes things we talked about where maybe some problems can be solved that have been worked on in other areas. They've got a larger RV park they've discussed with some folks. And similar to when I had my conversation in Powers, they also have an interest in a facility to process cattle. Something I learned talking with the Farm Bureau is there's a lot of demand, and the supply for that service is. I got the impression it's kind of dwindling, or folks are maybe reaching the end of their business cycle, or they're just not large enough for some of the demand we have. So somewhere to actually process the cattle, by processing, butcher it, and take the pieces we need from the critter. Uh, that would be beneficial. Myrtle Point's in a great spot for that. So that's something that'll be explored as well. I was able to get out to the State of the Lakes presentation out in Lakeside on Friday. It was Friday evening, and that's talk about the state of the lakes, how they're doing, how the water quality is, what's being done to abate shoaling, what's being done to make sure the streams are moving appropriately without doing damage farther down, and restoration in areas that need it. Water channels change over time sometimes, or because of invasive species, the water system isn't as healthy as it could be. So the association I was talking with out there and visiting their presentation, and I'm blanking on the acronym, which I'll catch flack for later, but it was a good presentation about what they're doing to make sure the waterways are complementary to the needs of the community, the water quality is good, and keep the algae blooms down. Because that's, if you've, well, I guess throughout the entire county, algae blooms are probably something folks are all familiar with. Blue-green is usually what you see for the inland, and then if you're dealing with salt water, you're more likely to see red blooms. Both of them are bad for you. I've got a meeting tomorrow about a land trust. That's a cool topic. So land trusts, you can kind of think of almost as an RV park with actual built houses. So similar to an RV park, you can rent the space, or senior communities, you could buy the house that's on a spot, but the land and the equity in the land is retained by the owner that sold you the house. I'm trying to explain it. That's about as good as I think I'm going to get. And it keeps the cost of the house down. But the person owns the house, so it builds equity. They can resell it later. The purpose of a land trust is a hand-up system. So it's that bridge from when somebody has been a renter and now they're going to be an owner, but they can't afford to just go into the standard market. So the land trust has houses built upon land. The buyer buys the house. The land trust retains the land so that they can ensure that it's continued to be used for what it's intended. And when that person in that house has built up enough equity and they're ready, they sell that house, and now they have the down payment for a property where they will own the house and the land, just as a standard property owner, like our grandparents would have had, or parents, or some of us that are fortunate enough to be able to do that. This is a bridge towards home ownership. It's another stepping stone that makes it more achievable. So that's a cool project that's going on. I'll be talking with somebody about that tomorrow, and then some of the housing developments through different projects, some of the different businesses and nonprofits in the area that are building housing. Collect a little data. That's general stuff about tourism out towards Powers. I mentioned quite a while back now, there was an energy resilience study that was going to be grant funded that we were working on for the entire county. Unfortunately, that grant is one that's been cut out of the budgets. I think it was a state grant, and I don't know exactly why they cut it, so I don't know if it was the state's decision solely as the state or if it was an impact of federal decisions. Either way, the grant is cut. But there is something else that can be done, so we're talking with Energy Trust of Oregon. They have funding to do a study, at least of the county's buildings, to see if there are options to add solar or some other systems so that we can have on-site energy generation, reduces the drain on the grid, and reduces the bills for the county so that we can have a little more utility efficiency, a little more cost efficient. So that's always the objective. Best way to make money is to not to spend it. So we'll try and do that as well. But again, the world is volatile right now. We find out about changes, sometimes funding cuts. We're finding out on a couple days' notice at best, if not just finding out suddenly one day, nope, money is gone for something. Also have a meeting tomorrow around mineral history. So folks may not know, especially if they're newer to the area, Coos County had a substantial history of mining at one point. Now, Some of it went away because it was just a low quality material, like coal. The Bunker Hill district in Coos Bay, it's actually county land, but it's right there, and most people think it's part of Coos Bay. That is not named for the Battle of Bunker Hill. That is named because it was a coal bunker. It was a Bunker Hill. We had a lot of coal mining here back in the day. Not something we could likely return to. Even putting environmental considerations aside, it was just a really low quality of coal, so it's not terribly useful. We also had chromite production. That's something I'll expect to learn more about tomorrow. And then we actually have, from what I've seen and different things I've looked at, quite a bit of mineral deposits throughout the county. So part of this discussion, I suppose, will be, is that something that can be renewed? Which again would be a big environmental question, because I look at everything as existing in balance. We have an obligation to be productive with what we own, but we also have an obligation to protect, the continued use and health of everyone and the land that's around us. We need to take some things out of it, but not at the cost of total destruction. So that's kind of my thoughts on that, the meeting I have tomorrow. Looking at some efficiency items. The CAFA grant I've talked about before. That's something that funds our assessor's office, our clerk's office, not in total, and a couple other spots. Used to fund substantially more than it does right now. I think it used to be twice as productive as it is now. Money that comes from the state, although it is money we generate here, basically, when you pay your fees for document recording and these different things, marriage licenses, it goes into a fund, and that fund on a quarterly basis, from what I was reading, goes to the state. In the documents I was looking at, the indication was state keeps 10%, 90% comes back out to counties. So face value, you would expect us to get 90% back of what we put in. And I was confused when I looked at numbers, and I asked the treasurer, we aren't getting 90% back. What's going on here? So the state uses a formula. They haven't provided it to me yet. I think that's going to take a little more conversation to get a hold of, because some of these things I ask for, maybe I don't communicate it well, maybe there's a misunderstanding, but eventually I get what I'm looking for. So right now we get less than 70% of what we've given them. And apparently there's a formula they're using to determine this. My concern is what I saw with the parks. The state for our RV parks uses a funding formula that's, what was it, 50% qualifying slots, 20% RV registrations, but 30% raw population. So a county like Washington County that has no qualifying slots receives more money than Coos County does, where we have 500 qualifying slots. I am worried that in the CAFA formula I'll find something similar. So I'm talking with the state about that to figure out why we're getting so little. If we had been receiving 90%, we would have received over $300,000 more than we have over the course of the last 10-ish years. But that would also raise the question, why did we even turn it in on a quarterly basis if they're just cutting it back out? Well, it's because of the formula, so I need to know what their formula is so that I can see why we're not getting as much as I think we should. Because it would seem to follow logic. If you're the one receiving the most money coming in for usage, you must need that money. But apparently the state disagrees, which I'm kind of getting used to. But not tolerating. Some of this is just more stuff where the Oregon Health Authority isn't getting information to us as efficiently as it could. It's draining some of our county resources because it's taking more time to deal with OHA than it does with other departments that provide similar information from the state. that's going to be a rabbit hole, probably one that's going to occur over time relative to some of these other priorities. Got some more information out of the Department of Revenue and the Employment Department. Always good to reach out to them. Somebody I went to high school with is one of the higher ups at our local employment department, so I bug him with my stupid questions, and then he gets the right people to answer them and figure out what I asked. That stuff around determining how much money is generated in the county as a whole for income tax, and then what each city is contributing, because I'm still dialing in on what that formula needs to be to receive a percentage of income tax back to cities and counties, but it has to also be a fair one. So I need to know what those numbers are, and then we'll have to work into our way into what the cost of services are and dive into this thing, because it's going to get a little tricky. Other than that, this week there's a couple things coming up I wanted to mention. The first one, the 21st, is the Veteran Stand Down. That's running from 9 to 2, and it is at the North Bend Community Center, according to my calendar. We have, that's something we're working on, jurisdictional plans, trying to get kind of the different communities around the county onto the same page with some planning items. Be a little more efficient. And then, let's see. The other one, though, port presentation. And my calendar timed out on me, but this is one I'm very interested in. It is at noon at the Mill Casino on Wednesday. Going to learn more about the upcoming or proposed and acquiring funding international port project. That would go out on the North Spit. We've had some rail repairs. Folks might have seen the Swingspan Bridge caught fire this week. As it pertains to the international port, I wouldn't consider that a factor. So when you're traveling south on the rails across that bridge, the farthest it goes is Coquille. That's not the part that's needed for the project. The project needs to run the trains from the North Spit to Eugene. So the part that caught fire, I don't expect to impact this topic. It is still important, though, because there are businesses that use the rail in North Bend and Coos Bay. But yeah, that port presentation, I'm interested. Folks have been here a while. Back when I was a kid, when you're on the boardwalk in Coos Bay, all those flagpoles. Side note: my grandpa and my great grandpa retired from shipyards around here, so we've had our eyes on shipping a while. But those flagpoles used to fly the flag of every country that made port here. We have been in major port in the past, and even during my lifetime, there was still a lot of pride in the fact that we had ships coming from all over the world here, and we celebrated that on the flagpoles on the boardwalk. I was a little sad when that went away, honestly. That was something I distinctly remember, and it was a point of pride in my mind that our area was so connected to the world, and we had an important role on that stage. So if this port project comes in, and if it is done in a way that is, of course, responsible and sustainable over time, that would be, in my opinion, a major showing and return to us being a important and successful area. I know there are folks with differing opinions on what the economic future should be throughout Coos County. I think we need some of everything, personally. Being dedicated to one or two industries didn't work out well. Now we have a pretty decently healthy tourism industry. It does fairly well. And of course, we have kind of shining stars of that, like Bend Dunes. Something in the nature of the port brings us back to a stronger maritime aspect. I think that's another important part, because stuff is always going to have to move. You can change a lot of things. There's a lot of talk about what AI means for the future of employment. You're never going to get away from the fact that stuff has to move, and shipping represents that. Just like with timber, you can never get around the fact that people are going to need wood. Or for tourism, There's always going to have to be a place for people to go. Those are industries that, while one may fail or two may fail, or decline, I should say, they're not going to fail because there has to be them. Um, it's important we have strong legs on our stool, not just a four-legged stool, but four legs that don't have termites in them. They got to be healthy. And this would be a big step towards that, I think. So that's my spiel on that. My update is done, and I'll let everybody get back to it, and I will start in again on work in the morning. Everybody take care.